Hello everyone, good evening Vancouver and also good morning Hong Kong. This is a PASM meetup group online tutorial class. Today is photography 103. Today's class is all about autofocus. So maybe many of us have used autofocus in nowadays camera or mobile phone, or I can say any photo taking device, even maybe video recording. Today we want to go into more depth into explaining how autofocus work and a little bit about its history. So hopefully everybody can learn more and to be able to get a much better photos and more sharp photos for the end result. And also today's topic can also apply to videography. If you are into doing video, kind of the similar ideas and concept, you can work on this as well. So let me point to our slides now. Okay, photography class 103. We are from PASM, Hong Kong Photography Group in meetup.com. Also, we have another group in Vancouver, also PASM Vancouver Photographer. This class is an introductory class to taking photos. Any question you have, feel free to email to me, garionhk@fugotech.com. This is one of the class we have been held. We have several classes before, like the introduction to photography, like the camera triangle or photography triangle, ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, and also we have explained a couple more things, even about basic composition. So you guys can go back to my video list about all the online tutorial. I think we have posted 4 of them together on the YouTube already. Okay, autofocus. This topic will cover basically not only the camera, DSLR, we will also cover a little bit about the mobile phone as well. Of course, we will talk about and mention the modern mirrorless camera as well. The idea of autofocus is using the electronic system to help us to focus every photos to get as sharp as possible. And later on, we will explain to you guys why we need autofocus. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the history first. At the very beginning, long time ago, okay, we have what we call the pinhole camera. The pinhole camera does not have any optical lens. It's very simple. It's just I could say it's more like a box with just using a needle and punch a small hole there, and then they have a film at the back of the box. So the pinhole is actually right opposite of the film, and then this can produce a very large depth of field. If you see in the bottom right hand side here, you can see even you are focusing maybe on the rabbit, you can actually see the grass and to the tree. And when we say the depth of field is very narrow depth of field, means we can only see the rabbit really clear in here, and then the tree and the grass will be a little bit blurry out. The reason why we want to use the optical lens to help us to focus is because when we just use a pinhole to get the light, it's not really enough. So in order to take a photos, then we need to take very long time. If you recall, like very beginning, when people want to take a portrait, they might have to sit for quite a while, like not like few seconds. They may need to sit like few minutes. But of course, you can say back then the film technology is not so great, and they're not using actually film. They use other technology, which is really they tend to need a very long exposure time. So people think of a new idea. Why not we just open up the aperture, like open up the hole. Instead of using a pin, we use a way bigger hole. And then we use an optical lens, most likely made by glass, to help us to focus just the subject we need to focus on. For example, in just portrait, we don't need to worry about too much about the background. We don't need to worry too much about the foreground. Maybe just it's okay. We can blur out a little bit. So back then, this is the reason, and the way to overcome this problem is using the optical lens. Okay. The thing is, when we use the optical lens, we have to move the optical lens back and forth in order to focus the object that we want. Of course, if you say every time the camera and the subject remain the same distance, we can keep almost the same focal length for the lens. But the problem is the subject might move, and we might not want to use it in the studio environment. We might want to use it in outdoor or in other environment that subject might be different distance from the camera. So every time we have to adjust the distance between the lens and the film. Okay, so due to, as here said, due to this kind of a problem, they have to adjust constantly with the DOF, the effective focus range. Okay, and I can say at the beginning, I think I forgot the exact years, but it has been a long time. People has to do it by manual. So you can see people turning the lens, there's a focus ring and keep turning. Even today's modern camera, you will find there is a focus ring, even in our today's camera. And then later on, I will explain to you why we might still want to use that, okay? For early SLR, we will skip a little bit. We will not talk too much about different kinds of a camera. We will just focus on the single lens reflex camera. It's easier to understand because it's more related to our modern world. There was what we call a focus screen. A focus screen in here explained is more like a translucent material. It has some kind of line, or it has a different focus shape to help us to in this photo you can see the hand is not aligned together in here. So the thing is, the lens has some kind of optical alignment to help us to figure out if this two is not aligned correctly, means that subject is not focused correct. This idea is kind of still using in DSLR as well. They kind of have this kind of what we call the focus line to help the sensor to focus. It usually divides into upper parts and lower parts in here. And then we have to turn the focus ring on the lens to align these two images. When these two completely align, means it's focused. So the thing is, when we talk about more like the modernized DSLR, you will have a thing that, I should say, you might find that it's very weird. The modernized DSLR almost cannot find that focus screen, only on very old menu like the SLR. The reason is because the DSLR has a problem with the autofocus system if we have installed the focus screen. So in order to compensate that, they remove it, and also many cameras company nowadays, they have the confidence that they can do a better job than we do, okay? So we might have to learn how they do the focus in order to work together with the camera, so then it can help us to do a better job. Otherwise, you will find that always the camera will tend to focus something you don't want to, okay? So this is the short history about the focus lens, and then we talk about more like the modernized DSLR focus system. This is the description about the whole camera DSLR. As I say, we want to talk about that system first, because then you can translate easier onto the mirrorless world and also mobile phone as well. So the object number one will shine the light through the lens. You can see the lens here, and then with the first mirror, and then it will refract some of the light up to the what we call the this one. This pentaprism, this one, pentaprism, and then to our viewfinder. But actually, it has a little bit light will pass through this mirror, and it will go to our focus sensor, or what we call the face detect sensor. Different cameras company might do this sensor on different area, but most likely in this way, and this is more like the traditional way they do. And when all the mirror flip up and cover up here, to cover up the, I could say the pentaprism area, the light will directly go straight to the sensor here, number 4, image sensor. Okay, so basically we have this sensor helping us to get the image. Okay, let's talk about a little bit drawback of this kind of design. When we focus the light, there are several issues of this kind of design. The first of all is when the mirror flip up, it will generate a little bit of shock to the whole camera body. Even though you put on the tripod, or no matter how you put it on, every time it flip up, there will be a little bit of movement. Beside the shutter itself, there is another movement developed by the mirror when it flip up. So some camera company, they develop very silent or very effective way to flip up the mirror effectively and slow it down almost at the top, hopefully they can reduce the shock for the overall movement. And also some of the modernized DSLR, they allow you to shoot the photo with just the mirror up. So basically you use the sensor directly and kind of like a mirrorless camera. And also another problem is this is a very ideal situation. The light here will bend almost like perfectly straight to the sensor. But the reality is there is always a little bit chance that this will not focus correctly. And also with this mirror here to this sensor, this here, this sensor and the mirror, although they have the calculation to focus, sometimes you will have what we call a little bit of adjustment, or I should say you might need to do a little bit of a micro adjustment for this problem. So for this design, because this might adjust a little bit, may not be 100% accurate. This when we install this sensor may not be very accurate, and the mirror may be not sitting at the 100% correct position. So when you take the photos, this sensor might not be 100% focused as what our system overall will think of. So there are quite like at least 3 problems. One is the mirror shock. Number 2, the light will not bend perfectly perpendicular, like straight to the sensor. Number 3 is the sensor itself here, the focus sensor might not be very accurate when you measure the light. It's not direct on the sensor, so it's kind of a little bit always a little bit inaccurate. When our sensor is not having like so much megapixel, like if it's like 20 megapixel or 20, I think anything below 20, it's still okay. You won't be notice this kind of problem. But our modern camera, they tends to have more and more pixel now, maybe 30 megapixel, 40 megapixel, and tends to be maybe 80 megapixel in the future, or even way higher. That will cause a lot of problem. Even a very tiny misalignment, then your photo will not be sharp enough. So the next slide. Modern DSLR focus system also have another problem. As you can, if you remember, there's a small the sensor at the bottom of the camera. It doesn't align all the sensor throughout the photos. Okay, this is the Nikon, I think D50 camera, and you can see most of the dots you can focus on is kind of in the center of it. It cannot cover most of the screen. So we have to, in the old time, I shouldn't say old time, but with DSLR, you might need to what we call the focus and recompose. What does that mean? Is like you point the camera, you focus on one subject, and then you want to recompose the position of the subject. Sometimes you don't want to put that on the right at the middle of the camera, and even though this few lines is kind of like a rule of third, but sometimes you do want to use more than rule of third, right? So this is a limit, so you have to focus and pan. So this is a skill you have to train yourself and turn it and make sure you didn't lost the focus too much. And also you have to be very well known about the depth of field, so it is the subject and you will be remain in the focus range, and as well hopefully the subject will not move too much, it will not be out of the depth of field. So this is another thing why DSLR will have a little bit problem when we do the focus and recomposition. For myself, I have a 70D. I did focus and recomposition, I could say, most of my time in 70D. I seldom use the live field focusing because that camera is quite slow. Later on I will go over to the mirrorless as well. So with 70D, most of the time I will do focus and recomposition. This is the way to help to get what we want for the composition and to still get a sharp, relatively sharp photos. Okay, but of course I will have a chance that you will lose the focus as well, because this is something it takes more time. Okay, so now we talk about the mirrorless camera focus system. I don't have photos here or explain to you, but basically mirrorless, they use what we call the sensor autofocus system. As it said here, the good reason is that it can reduce the shock introduced when folding up the mirror, and also it can reduce the problem. The actual focus sensor might not be aligned perfectly with the actual sensor itself. For the early mirrorless camera, even like my 70D, it has a dual pixel focus already. I think it's the first generation or the second generation. They use another kind of autofocus. It's called dual pixel focus, but usually the early mirrorless camera, they use what they call the contrast to detect autofocus. So let me give an example. The very early mirrorless camera, it will be like those point and shoot old days cameras. You will find the autofocus are quite slow. So when you have a DSLR and then you have like a point and shoot camera, you will find that the point and shoot camera focus it takes a little bit of time. It's more than it should be, and sometimes the object will be gone. Okay, so as you say, it's usually more slow. It's slower than face detection. The DSLR actually is what we call using this face detect sensor. Our mobile phone nowadays mostly use a contrast detection. It's similar to what the old age point and shoot cameras. So that's why you might find that the autofocus on your mobile phone is a little bit sluggish. It's not so fast. But nowadays, I can say a lot of them develop much faster now, and the CPU on the camera or on the now modernized mobile phone is really fast now. Still, when you compare to DSLR or modernized mirrorless, still you will find the difference. Okay, especially when something moving really fast, you understand why it is the difference then. And then for mirrorless camera, they don't have what we call a standard way to do autofocus. I can say Sony use kind of like a hybrid system. They combine face focus, contrast, and also they have some AI to tune into their chipset to do the autofocus. Canon use another way, what they call the dual pixel focus, a little bit kind of like a face detection. I personally find the Canon dual pixel focus is quite accurate. And the thing is, even though with the second gen of the dual pixel, or even I could say with the first gen of the dual pixel, it tracks quite well, relatively. Even if I use the 70D nowadays, if I track some moderate moving subject, it's still quite okay. It can still track it, and the focus can keep. I could say it will kind of like stick to the object. The focus will always be there. But then, of course, nowadays world will be. It's not only about focus. We will need to be focused on the eye. Okay, like here. Okay, always focus on the eye. So you get the almost like perfect picture. Not only on the face. It's always on the eye. Okay. Nikon use kind of sensor face detection as well, because we suspect many of them use Sony sensor, since Nikon cannot make their own sensor, so they might use a Sony sensor. They have their own algorithm to calculate it. Also Fujifilm or Olympus, all other brands, they have kind of this sensor detection autofocus now. The good thing is it almost cover 80+%. Some of them I could say they almost cover 90%. So it's really good. We don't have to worry too much about the focus and recomposition or recompose. So it's way better and we reduce the risk that when we turn our body and then we will lost focus on some subject there. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is the mirrorless camera focus system. This is the EOS R, the one you are seeing now is the camera I'm recording myself. It has way more cover area, so we don't have to do focus and recompose. We just mentioned that. Modernized mirrorless can use touchscreen to quickly select the object you want to focus. And unfortunately, I have to say it's still a little bit laggy than the true DSLR. Let me explain in this way. DSLR, their electronic system has been in a very long time. They receive the image to the sensor, it's all by optical, it's all light, there's not much to worry about, and the sensor has its individual system to compute the focusing, and I could say it's really fast in most of the way. But unfortunately for mirrorless, it first needs to read out the information like the sensor image to the chipset or the CPU of a camera, so it takes a little bit of time, and then the chipset needs to calculate the focus area on how to do it and what should I adjust the motor. So relatively, one is like direct reading from the sensor, the other one is like I have to capture that image and then use that image to calculate what should be the focusing for the actual focus area, or I should say the focus optical focus or DOF then. So it takes a little bit more time, and luckily our modernized technology really jumps a lot from 10 years ago. So that's how we got into this mirrorless camera with a very fast focusing system. But still, I still believe it's a little bit slower than before, than the DSLR. But nowadays it doesn't bite a lot, maybe like how many milliseconds. So especially in those really high-end one like R5 or the Sony A1 will be almost like insignificant to compare when you compare to the true optical focus system. And also when we say about the what we call the on sensor focusing system, they have many positions you can choose from. This one is 87 on the horizontal line and then 65 on the 65 rows, you can say. So there are just way too many sensors you can choose. And for this one, Canon will do a job to tell you that you don't have to worry too much, because you cannot really select a precise sensor. It will use few of them, maybe a group of them, maybe 4 to 5, or I should say 4 or 16. It will be more like a square, and then calculate the average focus range of that thing, of the object. So later on we'll explain to you why there will be a problem sometimes with this kind of arrangement. Okay, next slide. So in order to talk about the autofocus method and to synchronize with everybody, as I'm a Canon user, I will use Canon camera as an example to explain to everybody. And actually this focus idea is same as Nikon, Sony or Fujifilm or anybody else. It's just the same. They might have different names for their function. Their logo or icon represent that function may be similar but not identical due to each other's copyright. Okay, so for our DSLR candidate will be the 5D Mark IV, and then the other one will be R5 then. Okay, the first one is called single point focus. So this two only available in 5D Mark IV and R5. My what we call the EOS R will not have this Spot AF. Spot AF is a very narrow area, very small area that it can focus on, And so it is good when you have something hiding in a lot of maybe tree branch, and you want to focus that thing behind the tree branch, and you just point this square on that object, and then you will focus. So to do this, you can, in mirrorless world, you can just use your finger and touch the screen anywhere. So it's very easy. But on the DSLR, it's similar to the D850. This part actually doesn't cover so much. I enlarged it a little bit. This one actually covers just more like a center part of here, around here, center part, 60%, something like that. And the thing is, you see so many dots, it can only select one of them. You can't select in between for this mode, and or in between here or here. You can't in between the line or anything in between. You have to select this one. And the camera for the old, I shouldn't say old, but 5D Mark IV will try to focus on this part, as I will, similar to the R5, will be very tight spot. Okay, you will use more data on this sensor instead of the sensor around it. So this is the reason. This is the idea, to have a very small area. The camera will only concentrate and focus on that. This is only good for something behind a tree. If you want to focus someone like playing football on the field, should you use this one? No. The reason is because you might point at the person's face, not the eye. So this thing will tend to focus on the face, not the eye. If you have not used the box to cover up the person's eye or something. So if you say you can focus really quickly, you can move your camera really accurately, then it's okay. You can try using this Spot AF to put that box on that person's eye to narrow down to only that eye, okay? But I could say it's a little bit difficult to do. So second one, the name is a little bit different. It's still called single point, or some in 5D will call 1 point spot focus. R5 will call 1 point spot AF, similar idea. In R5, the box will be a little bit bigger than before to give you the effect that, oh, okay, this is more wider area, and then you can move, you can have the box maybe more than eye and nose, then you're still covering up this area. For the 5D Mark IV, you can see the center small circle is gone. It's only the square, the big square here. Then same idea, you can only focus on each of the dedicated area for the mirror camera, DSLR. For mirrorless, you can basically drag this anywhere. Okay, so it's way easier and then less chance to do the recompose. Okay, then the next one. Okay, the next one is called the AF point expansion. What does that mean is, for example, in 5D Mark IV, it will try to focus on the center part here. So it's more like a course, and will center part focus on here, and then it will take account of this area. It will also calculate this 4 area to check the focus information, the distance information. The thing is, with this system, it's still more like old day chess thing. So as here you can see, it's always here, 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 or here. It cannot extend outside than that. For example, if I have if I have the center focus point here, then I will miss the upper part and the right part data then. So it's a little bit annoying. And then for this part, then I will miss the upper part focus information. I will only use this 3 and then with the center part. And then if I here, then only 2. I can't use that one. I cannot, there is no sensor here, so it cannot be used. It cannot get the information there as well. For mirrorless world, you can say use all the blue line outlined area as the AF calculation, and it's very effective for moving object. So this is something if you have someone is running, or I could say a bird or something moving, but not relatively too fast, but moving a little bit, kind of like a slow jogging or something. You can try to use this one, and it can focus quite well for these two cameras. And as I said, mirrorless, no need to recompose. Okay. So next one will be expand AF around. So the idea is similar as the before one. They expand the idea up and down and left and right, but this time also include the four corners. So if you check the AF here, it's similar as the not expanded, not rounded one, I should say. It will stuck a little bit. But the thing is, it expand here. Okay, this is something you might have to understand a little bit. So this is the lower left corner. It will include that as well. But then this part, from upper part here to here, there are 4 dots will be missing. So some sensor cannot sense it at all. For mirror as well, he will use kind of like a big circle, and they will try to capture, or I should say focus everything in here. And this is really good for something moving really fast for this kind of system. And please remember, these two systems, their primary focus object will be still in the center one. Okay, so because I have to explain in this way, because next one is a little bit confused for this compared to these two. The next one is called the Zoom AF. Okay, so it looks similar, very similar to the other one. Okay, it looks like very similar, but the thing is, Zoom AF is usually to focus on the closer subject within this 9 box. Okay, the one before is called the round one. It will focus primarily on the center object of this box, but with the round shape, like all the sensor around it. So the camera can predict the movement and anticipate the movement and refocus faster. So this is the idea. For example, some guy is running and you want to do in this way. But the Zoom AF is like we let the camera to do all the guessing for itself. So for example, if I have something in front of me, like maybe a cup or even some glass or something, and I'm behind the glass, even though we are all within this box, the camera will focus on the glass first, not me. Okay, this two focusing system means and how they different from each other and how we should use it. Okay, so using this one is not very good for when we want to track some subject. For example, if I want to track a bird flying around and it might fly behind the tree or the branches and then fly out again, this one might not work very well. So we will say this is more like for street photography, or sometimes family photography, like it's open, wide open, there's no foreground in the front. So this is the idea. And when it focus on certain subject, those, for example, if the subject is around this 4 dots, those 4 dots might turn to red in Canon world, in Nikon world maybe in green color. For the mirrorless world, that this area, if the same subject like will be around this corner, and then they will have some square here to notify you it is only using this area as autofocus, and the remain here, the outside, will be gone. So this one we have to remember the shape is similar. We kind of feel it's the same, but actually it focuses only on the closer subject. Okay, so this is something you have to, we all have to remember that. And then the next one, larger zone AF. So same idea. It will tend to use more sensor, no matter this way, or that way, and then we choose in that sensing area the closest subject to get it to focus. Okay, for mirrorless world, it's still the same, like a vertical or horizontal, and you can move that box up and down any way you want, or like a left and right any way you want. There's no, like, you don't have to worry about like each dot. And the thing is still is same as the idea. It will only focus on the closest subject. Okay, not like it will track something very effectively. It just focus anything closest to the camera. Okay. So the last one. This one is a little bit complicated in the mirrorless world. For DSLR, it's very simple. You have so many dots here, and just let the camera to focus on the closest subject. So this is simple, right? Just let the camera to focus anything closest to it. In DSLR, it's just like that, because those sensors cannot understand what kind of photo it's taking. The sensor can only know it's focused or not. It doesn't study. There's no AI, no calculation. It's just, I should say, a little bit calculation, but cannot understand the shape of a certain object. Okay. But when we talk about the mirrorless world, it has something way better than the DSLR. It will understand the subject. For example, it will be able to track the face, even in the first gen, I should say the first gen dual pixel, Canon dual pixel focusing system, or the nowadays one, they can even track the eye. So they understand where is the face and where is the eye, and it will tends to track the closest one to the camera or the brightest one. Also in Nikon's world, I'm not sure if nowadays R5 can select the eye, but in Nikon world, I definitely know that they can select which eye to track. So this is way cooler. Maybe you have a bunch of people walking slowly to you, and then you can select which person's eye to select to focus on. But Canon, I'm not so sure about that. So this is for portrait, it's okay. I know it can, but like 2 or 3 people walking slowly toward you and which eye to focus, it might not be able to do really accurately. So the thing is, with the mirrorless world, as I say, because every time it reads the whole image to the computer or CPU in the camera, so XI will kick in and calculate and recognize the face or eyes, so we can focus way better. And also even nowadays, eye focus, they can track animal eye. Even in R5, it can find the bird's eye really accurate. If you love wildlife photography, Canon R5 or R6 has a very good tracking record for that. Sony one is also very good, but only in the A1. A1 is really good. I'm not sure if anytime soon Sony will have another A7 IV or something, maybe in the future, and I believe by then that camera's autofocus system will be very accurate to track animal eyes as well. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about each of their limits. Okay, for DSLR, because it's using kind of like a face detection, so subject with very low contrast, like blue sky, solid color, it cannot track very well. And also something is called the very low light, because it's autofocus system do need a lot of a little bit more light than the I could say the mirrorless world. And then strongly backlit or reflect objects will affect its focus, like I should say glass or something, so it will have this problem. Obstructed main object like animal in cage but behind tree and branches will have some problems, so it tends to focus the cage or the branches. Object with dots or light faded, like scene, like in nighttime, you might have to select something relatively easier to focus, not just the dots, not the light itself. You have to maybe some building, more like a structure, you can see the pattern. Repeated patterns for skyscaping windows, and then subject with finer pattern, smaller than AF point, kind of like a very fine line. It cannot find that thing, okay? So this is the limit. And then you will see for the mirror, it's way more, okay? In a sense, it has more limitation. Also, very low contrast, very low light, badly reflected object, animal in cage, bird behind branches, skyscape, very fine lines. Because for that, even though they have many sensors, it tends to, I think it's more easy to miss for some reason. I don't know why. Flicker under LED, especially LED light. Many of our LED lights cannot have a very stable output. The one you see here is okay. It's especially for video light, but many times our house LED light is really bad, okay? So it might tend to have more problem on focusing. And then extremely small objects, because those ones may be even smaller than the optical can detect. Those optical sensor, maybe in between the optical sensor, it cannot detect. And edge of the screen, of course, is out of the sensor area, but it tends to, because we all want to have, how to say, maybe it's like, because we used to be able to focus almost everywhere, so sometimes when some subject is really on the edge of on the screen, it cannot focus, but we tend to forget about that. And then this thing is really annoying sometimes. When we perform AF, autofocus, the subject is very far from the focus range, or is very far out of focus. So what does that mean? For example, you are focusing something very close now, and then you focus something relatively far away, and then at the same time there may be a blue sky and a bird is flying in the sky, and that will be very difficult for it to find. First of all, the blue sky as here, it's very low contrast, and then it has, the subject is way, you cannot understand, the camera cannot really understand what should be the correct focus range. So in case of this one, I give you some hints. It's like you can turn the autofocus ring by yourself to the closer one, to the closest focus distance, and then let it to hunt from that one to infinity. You will have more chance to get the focus. But if you just let it hunt for like a wild hunch, maybe last time you focus on 2 meters and then now is let's focus something on the sky, then the camera will try, it might try to focus on the closer range first and then longer range, and after one time our camera might give up. Okay, it will not keep back and forth too many times. So this is some ideas I find. If you taking a photos like very close to you now, and then the next photo is very far away, turn the focus ring to focus something closer, and then let it hunt for more chance to get it in focus then. Okay. Then the next one actually is we have to use autofocus with the autofocus operation together. Okay, this is an idea because we have the electronic system now. We have to use it more effectively. So most of us, when we learn the autofocus, we will do the one shot. It's like single shot. We press half of the shutter and you will focus on that subject. But then eventually you'll find, the subject move a little bit, and then the camera cannot refocus. So this is the thing, and this is the reason why we have to understand the next two autofocus operation. The next one will continue track of focus on the track subject while holding the shutter halfway. This one, most of the time, if you try to lock on to a flying bird using this way, your lens will keep adjusting itself to lock onto the bird, or someone is running towards you, you can use this AI servo mode to ask the camera to keep on tracking on that subject. These three ideas just the same in mirrorless world or in DSLR. Mirrorless world tends to nowadays do a little bit better than the old DSLR. And then single shot is more likely for some subject that is not moving towards you, especially, or away from you. Then that thing is more likely to do a good job, maybe like a scenery shot, something like that. If you use a AI servo to do a scenery shot, is it okay? It could be, but you don't want to change at all. You want every shot to be, how should I say, to be consistent. Especially when you do something like exposure, like a multiple exposure, or like a long, like a bracketing. So then you want to be all focused and everything to be same. You might even want to, after you focus using the single shot focus, you hear the sound beep beep or something. You switch back to manual focus and then press the shutter a few more times. AI focus is kind of a system more like in the DSLR world. It's usually for subject that it will detect the object if it's moving or not. Mirrorless world, you will just keep tracking it 100% like this one. We will not, it will just, honestly, will just keep tracking. This one will focus on the subject and then detect if it's moving or not. But then it's kind of weird because if it's not moving, then maybe I just use that one. If it's moving, maybe I just use this one. So usually I use these two instead of the last one. Okay, next one, when to use which one, and then we'll list some sample and explain like some suggestion to you. One person or portrait. Okay, the best things: face, eye focus if you have mirrorless. Okay, if not, then use single point. Okay, you can use one shot or AI servo. So this is something that you might want to use on the eye focus. And also thank you for asking me. Thank you for your comment. I will keep it up. Thank you. Okay, second one, single point spot AF, because you have DSLR, so you might want to use that one. So remember to lock onto the closest eye, not the farther one or any other parts. Tends to, we want to see the photos to have a very clear eye. If your photo doesn't have a clear eye, then people will think it's out of focus. Okay, it's really difficult to persuade people to think it's done on purpose or something. So either way, you can do one shot or AI servo. This two way depends your subject is moving or the model is moving, or if you have a very long lens, 85 or something, you can use AI servo as well if you want to make sure every photo is tag sharp. So another one, AF point expansion. This is okay as well. If they might moving around and give you want to do a more dynamic photos, have the hair to wave a little bit. One shot or AI servo. Group photo. Please remember, focusing can help you to get certain depth of field to the ideal range, but you have to make sure that everybody to stand within the DOF. Okay, so use a higher aperture, maybe 5.6 or maybe 6.3 is a little bit too small, but 5.6 or 4.0 at least to allow a depth of field. So the way is use AF point expansion around. So then in this way you focus maybe 2 person. So in this way more people will be in focus and you get a better average in this way. One shot should be good enough because everybody tends not to move a lot, and also because you change the aperture to a higher aperture, there will be more chance to get autofocus, or I should say the focus correctly. Zone AF also correct, but that thing you have to make sure that all the group tends not to lay out into too many rows. Okay, But usually I will use just AF point expansion or round corner or something. For one thing is, as we say, the Song AF only focus the closest subject. Okay, if you have 3 rows of people, focus on the center row and then make sure the depth of field is good enough. So Song AF, you might lose some focus on the back. So this is the idea. Larger Song AF, some people like to just don't guess and use larger Song AF, but if you understand, you can use AF, and this 3 mode is always available in most of our camera, unless for one person only the face one is only available in the mirrorless world then. Okay, spot, okay, slow action portrait, same, eye or face AF, AI servo mode, AI focus mode, make sure it's always focused on that person's eye. AF point expansion, if you cannot really have any eye focus, face focus, also remember to turn on the AI servo or AI focus. Very fast action, or maybe it's a group or something. AF focus point, for that, try not to use eye focus. It doesn't really help so much. And I could say a higher aperture to have more depth of field, more chance to get that sharp photos. Strong AF, if you know that person will not have something stand like in front of him, then use strong AF. Large AF, remember all action, we tends to use AI servo or AI focus, so then the camera will know, it will keep tracking those subject or person or something. Okay, even maybe a car or something, this is something you might want. Okay, street photography. Oh, sorry. Okay, street photography. Subject not. Too much. Okay, street photography. Subject not moving. We can say AF expansion around one shot. I tend to use that one more, but of course you can use song or eye focus, face focus, anything. I use this one because I might not be able to really focus that person. That person maybe on his or her side profile, it might not be able to do it. So this way it will be easier to lock onto, even her head is completely turned around. Okay, and one shot should be okay because you find that action, press half shutter and boom, like that. Okay, subject is moved as well. AF point is okay. The reason why I don't choose song focus like a larger one, because in street photography you might not want something that is closer to you. You might want to some subject maybe in between some layers. So this is the thing, you want to make sure that thing in between or that interesting object or subject is the thing you focus on. So choose this one, not the song one. Okay. If in case you have a person, if possible, use eye focus or face focus. AI, it might tend to be a little bit slow. If they okay to allow you to take a good photos, take the time to do the focus, this is good. In case AF focus point also is good for this too, in case you have a DSLR. Okay, wildlife. Oh, so almost should be the end, I think. Okay, this class is a little bit long. Subject not moving. Okay, so it's way easier. Autofocus, expansion, one shot or AI servo. I will always use the AI servo when it's, some subject is not moving, unless it always have some tree or branches in between. Otherwise, I will use AI servo most of the time. Subject moving, definitely use AI servo and AI focus. But if you have a very modernized camera, R5, R6, A1 or something like that, eye focus for sure. Otherwise, AF point focus is okay as well. All of them, most of them, I should say, use AI servo. So others, scenic, more like scene photos, single point AF, one shot is okay. No need to worry too much. You can use AF point expansion around one shot. It's also okay. No need to like a AI surfer mode. For food, like food photography, single point one shot. Make sure you don't shake your camera or use a tripod. Actually, scenic, if sometimes you use a tripod will be better, or just use a very fast shutter speed if possible. Then you don't need to bring a tripod. I'm quite lazy, so I don't bring my tripod sometimes. But for night photography, I do need to bring my tripod, unfortunately. I cannot hold my camera for like 1 second, I cannot do it. And then AF point expansion, okay? So that's about it. Thank you everybody. So this is the end of the class, and I know it's a little bit long, it's almost 1 hour. Thank you everybody for your patience to listen to all the information. I hope I can give you a better understanding on every focus mode and how they perform and how you should use it. And remember, the zone one and the AF expansion one, the difference between these two, it is really crucial. Otherwise, you'll keep wondering why every time you cannot get a very sharp photos. Okay, so I conclude here, and hope to see you guys next time on the exposure compensation. Okay, and see you guys next time then. I cannot think of an exit line. Anyway.